The check was sitting in the middle of the dining room table. $60,000. My parents smiled proudly as my younger brother picked it up with shaking hands. "We're so proud of you," my father said. "This should be enough for the down payment." My brother hugged them both. I don't know what to say. Mom laughed through happy tears. "Just promise you'll invite us over for Sunday dinners." Everyone in the room applauded. I smiled too. I truly was happy for him. Until my mother turned toward me and casually said something that changed the way I looked at my family forever. "You'll be fine. You can always rent somewhere." The room fell completely silent. I honestly thought she was joking. I laughed softly. "Wait, what?" She shrugged. "Your brother needs help more than you do." I looked at the check, then at my parents. "So that's it." Dad nodded as though it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "You've always been independent. You'll figure it out." My name is Rachel Morgan. I was 32 years old, a financial analyst who had worked hard since graduating college. And in that single moment, I realized my parents had confused my independence with not deserving support. Looking back, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. Growing up, my younger brother, Jason, was always the center of attention. If Jason wanted the last slice of pizza, Mom gave it to him. If he forgot his homework, Dad rushed it across town. If I forgot mine once, I was told, "Be more responsible." When Jason struggled in math, they hired him a private tutor. When I struggled in chemistry, they handed me a textbook and said, "You'll figure it out." Eventually, I did. I figured everything out. I earned scholarships, worked part-time during college, graduated with honors, found a stable career, paid off my student loans before turning 30. Every achievement came from discipline, not luck. Whenever relatives complimented me, my parents always smiled proudly. Then someone would ask, "So how did you raise such a responsible daughter?" Mom always answered the same way. "Rachel never needed much help." I used to take that as a compliment. Now I realized it had quietly become an excuse. Jason wasn't a bad person. He wasn't lazy. He simply grew up believing our parents would always catch him if he fell. They often did. After college, they paid his rent for nearly 2 years while he searched for the right career. When his car broke down, Dad bought him another one. When he wanted to start an online business that failed within 8 months, my parents quietly covered nearly $18,000 in debt. No one ever mentioned repayment. Meanwhile, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment. I drove a 10-year-old sedan, skipped vacations, cooked nearly every meal at home. Not because I enjoyed sacrificing, because I had a dream. I wanted to own my own home before I turned 35. Every month, I transferred money directly into a savings account before paying anything else. Friends teased me. "You work too hard." Maybe I did. But every dollar brought me closer to that dream. One Sunday afternoon, my parents invited the family over for dinner. Everything seemed normal. Mom made roast chicken. Dad grilled vegetables. Jason looked unusually excited. Halfway through dessert, Dad disappeared into his office. When he returned, he carried a large envelope. He placed it in front of Jason. "We've been saving this for years." Jason slowly opened it. Inside was a cashier's check. $60,000. Mom smiled proudly. "Now you can finally buy a house." Jason stood and hugged both of them. He looked completely overwhelmed. "I can't believe this." Dad laughed. "You've waited long enough." I clapped along with everyone else. I genuinely meant it. Until Mom looked at me. "Rachel." I smiled. "Yes. We know you're thinking about buying a place too." "I am." She nodded. "Well, you'll have to keep renting." I frowned. "I'm sorry." She spoke so casually, it almost sounded rehearsed. "We only had enough saved to help one of you." I glanced toward Jason. He suddenly looked uncomfortable. Then back at my parents. "So you decided he needed it more?" Dad folded his hands. "Exactly." I asked the question quietly. "Why?" Mom smiled sympathetically. "Because you're stronger." I stared at her. "What does that have to do with anything? You've always managed. You have a good job. You'll be okay." I felt something inside me slowly breaking. So because I worked hard, I deserve less. Dad sighed. "Don't make this about fairness." "It isn't." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Then what is it about?" Mom answered without hesitation. "Need. Jason needs us." I looked at my brother. He wasn't smiling anymore. He quietly whispered, "I didn't ask for this." I know. None of this was really his fault. The decision belonged to our parents. I finished my coffee in silence. Then I stood. I should get going. Mom looked surprised. "Already? I have work tomorrow." She hugged me before I left. You understand, don't you? I forced a small smile. I understand more than you realize. Driving home, I replayed that conversation over and over. Not because of the money, because of what it represented. My independence had become invisible. Every sacrifice, every late night, every careful financial decision. Instead of being respected, they had become reasons to overlook me. The following Monday, I met with my financial advisor during my lunch break. After reviewing my savings, investments, and mortgage options, he smiled. You know, you don't actually need anyone's help. I looked at him. What do you mean? He turned his computer screen toward me. If you're willing to buy something that needs a little work, you can afford a house right now. I stared at the listings he pulled up. Most people would have ignored them. Old, outdated, in need of repairs. But one property immediately caught my eye. A neglected brick home on the edge of town with a wraparound porch, mature oak trees, and enough potential to become something beautiful. The photos weren't impressive. Peeling paint, overgrown grass, an aging roof. But beneath all of that, I saw possibility. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I smiled. If they believed renting was my only future, they were about to discover just how wrong they were. The moment I stepped onto the front porch of the old brick house, I knew everyone else had overlooked something. The paint was peeling. The front yard was overgrown with weeds. Several windows needed replacing. The roof had clearly seen better days. Most buyers walked in, took one look, and walked back out. I didn't. I saw sturdy hardwood floors hidden beneath worn carpet. I saw sunlight pouring through large windows. I saw a wide wraparound porch where I could drink coffee every morning. Most importantly, I saw something that had always mattered more to me than perfection. Potential. My real estate agent smiled. It definitely needs work. I nodded. So did I when I graduated college. She laughed. I think you'll like this place. We spent nearly an hour walking through every room. The kitchen was outdated. The bathrooms needed renovation. One bedroom had water damage from an old roof leak. But the foundation was solid. The inspection confirmed it. When we finished, my agent looked at me. So, what do you think? I smiled. I think I just found my home. 2 weeks later, I signed the paperwork. No gifts. No family money. No special favors. Just years of careful saving, disciplined budgeting, and believing in myself. The day I received the keys, I stood alone inside the empty living room. It echoed. The walls were bare. There wasn't a single piece of furniture yet. Still, it felt like the richest moment of my life. Because everything around me represented something no one could ever take away. I had earned it. The next 3 months became the busiest of my life. Every evening after work, I drove straight to the house. I watched online tutorials, learned how to install flooring, painted every room myself. Friends volunteered on weekends. One coworker helped replace light fixtures. Another taught me how to refinish kitchen cabinets. Slowly, the neglected house transformed. Fresh white walls replaced stained wallpaper. New landscaping surrounded the porch. The old oak trees became the centerpiece of a beautiful front yard. Every improvement carried a memory. Every room reflected another lesson learned. One Saturday afternoon, while planting flowers near the mailbox, my phone rang. It was my mother. We haven't seen you in weeks. I've been busy. Busy doing what? I smiled. Working on something important. She laughed. Still apartment hunting? I paused. No. There was a brief silence. What do you mean? I bought a house. Complete silence. Then, you what? I closed 3 weeks ago. You never told us. I answered honestly. I wanted to surprise everyone. Mom sounded stunned. But, how? I saved. I qualified for the mortgage. And I bought a fixer-upper. She didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, she whispered. We had no idea. Neither did I. Until someone else believed I couldn't. A month later, our family gathered for Dad's birthday. It was the first time everyone had been together since the dinner where Jason received the $60,000 check. During dessert, my aunt smiled at me. So, when are we finally going to see your apartment? I smiled. You won't. Everyone looked confused. Dad frowned. What do you mean? I don't rent anymore. Jason looked surprised. You actually bought something? I nodded. I did. Mom stared at me. You never mentioned it. I gently answered. You never asked. The room became uncomfortably quiet. Then Jason smiled. Can we see it? Of course. The following weekend, my family drove to my new house. As Dad stepped onto the porch, he stopped walking. This is yours. Yes. Mom slowly turned in a full circle, taking in the restored landscaping. The pictures online never showed anything like this. I've been working on it. Dad wandered through each room without saying much. He admired the refinished floors, the updated kitchen, the restored fireplace. Finally, he stood in the backyard overlooking the large oak tree. I underestimated you. I smiled softly. No, you underestimated what consistency can accomplish. He lowered his head. I suppose I did. Later that afternoon, Mom quietly asked if we could talk alone. We sat together on the front porch. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, she sighed. I owe you an apology. I waited. When we helped Jason, I convinced myself you didn't need us. She looked at the freshly painted porch railing. I told myself I was rewarding responsibility. But really, I was taking it for granted. Tears filled her eyes. I never realized how lonely that must have felt. I swallowed hard. It wasn't the money. I know. It was hearing you tell me to rent somewhere. She nodded slowly. I've replayed those words 100 times. I wish I could take them back. You can't. I know. Another long silence followed. Then I reached over and squeezed her hand. You can choose different words going forward. She smiled through tears. I'd like that. Months passed. My relationship with my parents slowly improved. Not because the past disappeared. Because honesty finally replaced assumptions. Jason visited often. One afternoon he admitted something I'd never expected. I almost gave the money back. I looked at him. Why? Because I knew it wasn't fair. You didn't create the situation. No. But I benefited from it. He smiled. I've started paying Mom and Dad back. You don't have to. I know. I want to. For the first time in years, I saw my little brother not as the favorite child, but simply as another adult trying to do the right thing. A year later, my parents invited the entire family for another celebration. This time, Dad stood up holding an envelope again. Everyone exchanged nervous glances. He laughed. Don't worry. This isn't another check. Instead, he pulled out a framed photograph. It showed me standing on the porch of my restored home with a paint roller in one hand and a huge smile on my face. He looked directly at everyone. I spent years believing success came from helping someone start. He glanced toward me. My daughter reminded me that sometimes the greatest success comes from refusing to quit after nobody helps at all. The room erupted into applause. As I looked around the table, I realized something important. Buying the house had never been about proving my parents wrong. It was about proving to myself that someone else's limited expectations never had to become my own. Years later, people still ask whether I was angry when my parents handed my brother $60,000 and told me to rent somewhere. The truth is I was. But anger doesn't build homes. Discipline does. Patience does. Believing in yourself does. The house I bought wasn't the biggest on the street. It wasn't the newest. It wasn't the most expensive. But every brick, every repaired floorboard, every freshly painted wall reminded me of one simple truth. The greatest satisfaction doesn't always come from receiving what others are given. Sometimes it comes from building something extraordinary with nothing more than your own determination, and realizing that no one can ever take credit for the life you created yourself.